Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on October 17th, 2022 at approximately 11:32 a.m. PST. There's been a lot going on lately, especially in the political arena. Now, I am not one to get too terribly involved in politics. I tried it for a while. For about 4 years. I was a member of the board of directors for a local park. So I did get my finger and my feet into it. But what I found out was a whole lot less than enjoyable. Now, with that being said, I want to take a serious look at finances. Now, this is, again, I've been doing this for a very long time. I am not trained as a financial advisor. This is simply about a perspective. About a different perspective, and being one that doesn't have a whole lot of money, that might give you an idea of where some of this comes from. I've done this before, but didn't, so here we go. Now, the reality of it is this. I'm not a millionaire, just like most of you. I work for a living, and I'm working 35 to 40 hours a week. As far as my job goes, I also run a business, and of course, which is Invoice Enterprises, and I've got a staggering amount of writing going on. Right now, I think I'm writing currently 20 books at the same time, like literally at the same time. You can take a look at those on rkeithandrews.com, or if you want to take a look at if you desire to look at the novel that I'm writing, the novels, the saga I'm writing, go to Yldrbac.com. You can find me if you look below this video, you'll find a whole lot of ways to get a hold of me. Okay, but here's the thing. Especially with all the elections that went on. Now, I don't pay a lot of attention to politics, admittedly. But what I have found is most of what is said on the podium comes out in the wash and is seldom actually done. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm more interested in the finances. Okay, now I can tell you horror stories about some of what I've seen happen. But let's start with the positive side. People are living day to day. That came out well. People are living day to day, struggling to get by. Okay. Now, I have always held, if you can help your neighbor out, absolutely do. Okay. It's absolutely imperative that you help your neighbor out. Back in 1973, there was a song put out by the Carpenters, Up with People. I encourage you to look it up on the internet, on YouTube. Okay. But here's the thing. People struggle working day to day. We're told this is the bottom line for what you have to be earning to survive. Now, I cannot give you numbers, especially not in different countries. Okay, and what I can tell you is from the people from various countries I've talked to, the situation is pretty much the same. Right now, if you require X amount of dollars to live, just to live in a basic way, okay, think about this for just a moment. Why is it that the people that are at or right near that border, why are they the ones getting taxed? Okay, you're already having a problem. Should it not be, and I understand why it's not, and we'll get to that in a minute, but does it not make more sense on a global standpoint to take the people that are struggling to get by, the ones that are on the lower income, and scrap the tax on them? And here's why. If you scrap the tax on them, okay, give them the tax break, and once you get to a certain higher level, okay, you can afford the taxes that are necessary, and you wouldn't have as big a problem with so many people going on to social services in the first place. Okay, if the people that are not making the money are not being taxed, okay, you will find, first of all, they will spend more, the economy will start to grow. Okay. Now, I understand the people that are sitting in the political seats in the major corporations, they have a lot more pull because people seem to look at the world and go, those are the successful people. I look at the world and go, okay, you're working, 2, sometimes 3 jobs, okay, just to make ends meet. That to me is somebody that is successful. You're getting up in spite of the struggles you're going through, and you're making ends meet. Okay. Now, if we take the taxes that the poor people are paying, leave it in the poor people's hands. Okay. And I'm not talking about just the people that are on social services, and we'll get back to them in a minute. Okay. I'm referring to the people that are classified as, from what I've come to understand, are the working poor. You're out there, you're working, you're fighting to make ends meet, and you're paying taxes. You guys are the most overlooked people in the world. And I do mean that on a global base. Okay. If we take a look at that and the money is left with them, they will be able to afford to get, they will pick up the bigger ticket items that the wealthy are looking for, are hoping you can pick up. Because let's face it, major corporations make their money on the bigger ticket items. Okay. The reality is they actually make more money on the smaller ticket items from what I've managed to gather. But there are a whole pile more people that are struggling to survive than there are that are way above the poverty line. Okay. Now, I don't even know what the poverty line is in Canada. I do know I struggle on a daily basis to get ahead. Okay. And I certainly spend money that, I probably shouldn't, on things I probably shouldn't have spent it on. But I look at it and I go, I've got one car and that's it. Okay, I don't, and yes, this one is a new one, but I'm 59 years old. This is the first time I've actually had a new car. Sorry, it's the second time I had a new car. The first one got crushed by somebody else, as in it was parked and somebody backed over it. Okay, turned a really nice little small car into a mid-size into a compact, and then drove off. But when we take a look at the finances, if you look at what's coming in, okay, and you look at the people that are struggling to get by, if their tax rate is dropped, and the places that are making the big, big, big money are not give them the same tax rates, absolutely. Okay, but this idea that you've got to be making $100,000 to get a tax break, there's something backwards with the philosophy. Okay, it does not add up for me. Now, am I affiliated with any political party or any banking situation? Not at all. I deal with a bank, but I don't work with them. They handle my banking. Okay, but I look at the situation we're dealing with. Okay, I take a look at the finances. The way the world is sitting right now, people are looking at it very backwards. Okay, now when we take a look at it, you start with the tax side of things. Even if we turn around and just let's level the playing field and put everybody with the same tax breaks, never mind your tax limit or your income. You have to make a bare minimum of this in order to get a tax break. It's the people below that limit that require the tax break. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of ways you can work with it. But what I have found is the people that have a lot of money are not the ones that are really understanding it, in most cases. Okay. The reality behind it is this. When finances come up to a functional level where you're not struggling to make ends meet, you'll find stress level goes down, And if stress level goes down, the rates of depression go down, the rates of suicidal thoughts go down, the conflicts in relationships collapse. These are all side effects of bringing the finances back into balance. Okay, now that's just the start of it. Okay, and I realize, you go outside in the world today. Now, of course, I'm in Kelowna, BC, Canada. Okay, so from a practical standpoint, it's what I witness in town here that I can actually absolutely say, this is what I'm seeing. The rest of it comes from talking to people from all over the world. But I find the situations are the same. Now, people talk about a job short or an employment shortage. Okay, there absolutely is up here. I don't know for certain what it's like in the States. That's in the States or any other country. That's for you guys to figure out. Okay, but I can tell you this. The situation is still the same. Somebody offers you a job at a given wage to do a given job. Okay, number one rule of thumb, you've got the freedom of choice. You can either take the job or let it go. That's up to you. But if you choose to take the job, you are making an agreement, you're making a contract, albeit a verbal one in most cases, to do that job for that price. Okay, and one of those stipulations is showing up at work on time. Okay, if you run the business, that's your call when you want to show up to work. But I will tell you, showing up to work on time is critical. The number of employees that I talk to, or their coworkers, is usually the case, where the employees turn around, they're hired, and they consistently show up at work late. If you're showing up at work late, and this becomes a real big issue with unions involved, if you're showing up at work late, it means you're not fulfilling your part of the contract. Okay. And yeah, there's all sorts of conflicts that can come up there. But we have to look at the reality. The change starts with you. If you are taking on a job, okay, if you're turning around and saying, yes, I'm going to do that job. Number one rule, show up at work on time. Preferably within 5 to 10, preferably at least 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, in my opinion, to give yourself a chance to get organized and so everybody knows you're actually there. Because let's not forget, if you don't show up at work on time, somebody either has to stay later or the people that are left are going to have to work harder to cover the other people that are coming and to cover the customer. I don't like hiccups when you don't get warnings. I like hiccups anyway. So when we're looking at the finances, you have to respect them. Now, my father used to put it this way: take care of your pennies and your dollars will take care of themselves. Okay. So what I look at is we go back to this little aspect. Okay. This one right here. Well, this is actually the backbone to it. And yeah, I'll be with you in just a second. Yeah, of course. Jumping. Well, that just about came out wrong. Grab these two little sheets, which I probably should have grabbed ahead of time, but what the heck, didn't do it. The way that you look at change right now is this: you've got to be the starting point. Now, this little sign, in case you hadn't noticed, that says, I am worth it. That's the backbone of how you change things. If you desire your world to change, and I see this way too often, where people look at the world and go, I desire all of this stuff to change. I desire the world to be a better place, but I'm not willing to give up anything that is mine. I'm not willing to forego any of my pleasures or treat people in a more effective fashion, but I desire the world to change. Well, bad news. if the people don't change, the world won't. At least not in a good way. Okay, so you start with this little piece, right? You start there. Then we go to this one. Now, this one is, and again, the tools I offer here are the exact same tools I personally use. The philosophies I talk about are the exact same ones I live by. Now, this one here says I have legally acquired a minimum of $3,800 by October 31st, 2022 at 23:59. Now, in all fairness, I only require $3,000 to run my house, but I'm aiming overboard. Okay. And then here we have Inner Voice Enterprises has legally generated a minimum of $700 by October 31st, 2022 at 1 minute to midnight. Okay, now that number adjusts to what it costs you to run your house. But if we're looking at the reality behind it, if people are not paying attention, if you're not paying attention to your finances, the odds are you're going to overextend yourself. Okay, now I say that partially due to my own experiences. Okay, and partially because of the fact that I've talked to so many people that have done just that. But when we take a look at the finances, okay. Good afternoon, Elaine. Glad you could make it. When we take a look at the way that the tax situation is set up, people are given tax breaks, yes. But when you've got the tax breaks coming at the top of the income list, you may have a problem. Now, there's been, at least around here, there were a lot of city elections. A lot of city councils got shifted. Okay. And realistically, you're putting people in place in city council to help run your city in an effective fashion. Now, I ignore politics for the most part. I don't touch them because I find them extremely lopsided. Okay, that said, on Saturday when I had the opportunity to vote, I was actually the first one in line. Okay, to the point I actually had the questionable honor. I found it rather intriguing to verify before the station I was voting at opened. I was the first one through, so I had to verify that it was completely, and that all of the markers were completely at zero. Okay. Now, I encourage you to get in. When I'm talking about getting involved, rest assured, I'm not looking to run for office anywhere. I tried that. I wasn't overly happy with the outcome. But when we're looking at finances, it has to be an equal base. Okay. And this does not mean everybody requires money. I'm not saying it requires the same amount of money. Do understand the people that run a business, okay, the ones that own the business are absolutely, they are in a position where they should be making more money than the person that doesn't. Okay, when I took a job with the company I'm working with, okay, I didn't have to put any money out to get that job up and running. I didn't have to do any of that at all. So what I took a look at was, okay, where are we standing? Now, the company put out all the expenses to put the money in place. But you have to look at what you're getting paid. Are you being offered a wage that you can actually survive on? Here's the thing. We talk about inflation. Okay, and everybody goes, how do you stop inflation? Well, here's just a thought. Governments around the world have control over how that works. Okay, around the world. The easiest way, from my perspective, to stop inflation, and it will stop inflation absolutely cold. Okay, if the governments were to, across the country, whatever country you're in, I'm not talking about you do it the same, that one country says, oh, everybody does this. if each individual country were to turn around and go, okay, prices and wages are frozen. Inflation is now over. If nobody is allowed to raise prices and nobody is allowed to raise wages, then your inflation is now dead. It doesn't grow anymore. Pretty simple. I mean, one of the silliest things I've seen when you're getting a business license, and maybe I'm off on this one, but years ago I was looking into it, right? At the time, in order to open up a pub or a bar, you had to have X number of parking stalls. Now, here's the thing. The parking stalls, you got to question, because at the time, it was illegal to park overnight. You weren't permitted to park and leave your car overnight, and you weren't allowed to drink and drive. Now, if you're not allowed to do either of those, why do you have to have parking stalls? What's the purpose? Okay, yes, pubs need parking stalls because of the fact they are a restaurant. And though they offer alcohol, it's not part of the mainstay. Okay, but they've still got the same problem. Now, that said, when we're looking at your finances, we've got to take a look at the tax levels. And again, this isn't just about me. As a matter of fact, frankly, it's got little to do with me. I'm 59 right now, so I got another decade. I'm aiming for about another 5 decades, but we'll see how that works. Okay, where are we here? Yeah, we're in 22, so I'm hoping to pull at least 40, aka to break the 100-year mark. But where it comes to what the finances are doing right now, the reason everything is in flux is because it is not equal. Okay, it's not in a balanced perspective. And the people that are driving that are the ones that actually have the money. Okay, and this is where we have to take a look at it. Even when you take a look at pensions, I've seen it happen all over the place, in every union, in every government. Okay, we got to watch everybody's income, but we're going to give ourselves a raise and guarantee we've got a way higher than normal living allowance that the taxpayer continues to pay for decades after the politician is out, and that's after only a couple of years in office. Okay, and again, this is where we have a lopsided setup. Problem is, I look back over time, and I've seen this happen before. Okay, multiple times, where everybody goes into a tailspin because finances are tight, but the people that are supposed to be watching what's going on with your finances are watching what's going on with their finances, it would seem, and not paying much attention to the rest of it. Okay, now, do not get me wrong. Politics it's a difficult business. Okay, it really is, but it is a business. And in all fairness, it's more involved, but being a homemaker is an involved business. You still have to pay attention to finances. You've still got to pay attention to what you're doing. Now, to this end, I figured out how, and it took me a long time to do it. It took the government 40 years to straighten out my income tax. Not that I wasn't filing it, but that they weren't recording it properly. And I'm talking about through so-called professional, financial advisors. But you can take dominant control of your life right now. Right this second, you can take control of it, but it's up to you to do it. Okay, but the way to do that, and I'm not going to make you wait till the end of the broadcast. The way to take dominant control of your finances right now is, first and foremost, take a look at your bank account. Find out whether it's a bank account or whether it's the money you've gotten in a locker in a foot locker in your own house. It doesn't matter. Okay, it really boils down to an issue of, oddly enough, Elaine, I agree with you. I question the whole voting process. I can tell you, at least the station I was voting at was clear to start with. Okay. But I personally believe that the voting system is a good one. Do I believe that most of the people that are running in it are self-serving? Absolutely. Okay, and I don't consider it talking behind their back because I'll tell them to their face. Okay, but the reality of it is, it depends on whether we're talking city, whether we're talking city politics, city elections, provincial or federal. Okay, and I can pull those apart too, in a manner of speaking. I really don't pay much attention to it. Okay, the systems, it's not so much and I can, minor sidetracked. The financial, the political, the educational systems, the legal systems, they are all still fundamentally good. They are badly skewed out of proportion. But that can be changed by the right people getting into office and putting those tools to work. But like I keep telling people about past issues, you cannot change what's happened in the past. You can't. And I hate to tell you this, with those of you out there that actually consider this, destroying artwork, destroying monuments does not change history. It does not change the event. The sad part about it. Okay. Now, Elaine, what I'm not entirely certain of, and unfortunately this has a lot to do with my own memory, I can explain it if you're in Canada as to why it seems to be a little lopsided. Okay. But the whole layout of seating in the federal government in Canada, from my understanding, is completely lopsided towards eastern provinces. Okay, as far as the number of seats per capita that they've actually got over there. And because of that, the country is not, if that is in fact the case, then that is not going to produce a balanced economy. It can't. Okay. Because if the baseline is not balanced, you will not have a balanced outcome. Okay. It's very much like they say about computers. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. But this can still be changed if we make some rather severe modifications. Okay. As in, this is the precedent we set, which is great. But there was a precedent set years ago. If you were a midwife, okay, and you didn't have the backing of the church, you were now being sacrilegious and you were jailed or killed. Okay. If you spoke, there used to be a precedent where if you spoke against the government, okay, and talked about it, you were thrown in jail. Okay. Now, precedents have been there, but we got to look at when the precedents were made. And this is why I talk about the idea of a personal policy book. Okay. You take a look at what you're doing and you go, okay, my policy is when a bill comes in, like for me personally, I've got a policy that when a bill comes in, as soon as I know it's there, get it paid. Do not hang on to the money. I put it this way. I pay it right now because the stress is gone. I know the bill is paid and I don't have to worry about it. Now, the thing is, the argument against it is, well, if I hang on to my money, I can make a couple of cents extra. Sometimes that works, but here's what you got to remember. Okay. The interest you're making sitting in the bank is likely a lot less than the interest you're paying on your bills, meaning you're actually not making money by hanging on to it. Okay. And by the way, this applies to everybody, not just the poor people or the working poor. These same points apply to the wealthiest of the wealthy. Okay, all the way through it. It applies to government treasuries. These same principles apply, and the reason for that is because money does not care how you feel. It does not care how much money you personally have, and it certainly doesn't care what your health is looking like or who you're voting for. And bad news for you, it doesn't care about who you're crawling into bed with either. Okay, money works the same way for everybody. It really does. And the thing you've got to remember is if money works the same way for everybody, then you have to look at the reality behind it and go, okay, what am I doing with it? What is the goal of money? If it's to sit on money in your hand, okay, and I do so. Put that out of the way. I don't have a lot of money, but, well, that worked. But I'm sure some of you recognize this. It's called a cash box. Okay. Now, the reality is I've only got small coins in here. But the reality is, if I take a nickel and I put it in this box, it will stay there. It won't do a thing for me. Okay. But it will stay there and I'll have it. Now, what I do is I collect the coins, and as I go along, and then when I've got enough of them, I'll pop them into the bank. Okay, but when you're looking at the finances, okay, money doesn't care. Money will work the way money does. The people that have control over how it is spent, that's you. Now, I was going out, I had to look at it and go, okay, I don't like cooking. Absolutely, I don't. So I was going out to the restaurant myself. Usually 4, maybe 5 times a week. Needless to say, at $25 a pop, that means I'm going through $400 a month in restaurant bills, and that's only for if you're looking at four, you're looking at $400. Right. And I'm going at $25, $20 to $25 a night. Okay. Now, the reality is I could take that $400 and cover my entire month. So what I've done is said, okay, I'm spending too much at the bar. I'm spending too much at the restaurant. So I'm just not going to go as often. And I'll just buckle down and actually figure out how to cook a little. Everybody that is working with finances has the same thing. They all have to figure out, all of you, none one of you is any different. You've got to figure out where your priorities are. Okay, if your priority is to get your finances in your pocket to start growing, then the trick is to stop spending more than what you're earning. Now, I've gone through it in prior videos, and this applies to every household, every business, every government. Okay, there's not an exception. Yeah, no doubt. If you're 25 miles from town, you wouldn't be going into town very much. I live within walking distance of the restaurant I go to. That's, and I've always told them, you're way too close for me. But, everybody, I'm not saying you shouldn't go out for dinner. I am saying get a look at your finances, find out how much it costs you to run your household or your business. Figure out what that is. Okay, that's your priority, step one. Well, step one, as I said earlier, is decide that you personally are worth the effort. Okay. Figure out what your finances are. And it doesn't matter where it is. The government talks about you've got to have a balanced budget. I absolutely agree with them. The thing I find fascinating, though, is that so many governments, so many city halls will sit there and they'll tell you you need a balanced budget, and yet it's very seldom they have one. Okay, but you got to understand something here. There is no way that a city, that any sort of government house, any sort of like no government house is going to be able to say, this is how much money we're going to go through in the way of expand, in the way of power requirements, because the individual homeowners and business owners are the ones that dictate how much. So whoever is handling finances for the cities has to be, you got to give them a little slack. Okay, because what they're actually doing is guesswork. I think we're going to go through about this much. And they've got, the theory is they should be keeping very close tabs on it. Now, I recommend the same for every single household out there. Every one of them, whether it's a household, a business, okay, it doesn't matter. Even the people living on the street have the same problem. They've got to know how much money they're going through. Okay, or how to get around it. Now, the thing is, we've got a couple of things that really create a problem here. And I've already talked at length about the tax side of things. The other problem that arises is the number of people that are taking jobs. They agree to the job at a given wage. And it's not a question of, oh, we'll talk about it later. Most of the time, the employer is right there and says, this is what you're going to get paid. Okay. When you may get more later, but right now, this is what you're getting paid. If you're taking that job, do the thing. And this is where I run into a bit of a snag. There are so many companies, there's so many unions out there that a union employee doesn't want to do their job, and yet the boss can't fire them. Okay. Now, there's a problem with this. In any other business, if an employee is not doing their job, they can be fired. Okay. In a union, they can't be. At least not from what I gather. But again, it boils down to the people at the top going, if I keep these people working, they're going to keep me in this position of power. Same thing applies to the politicians. Okay. They seem to be looking at it, and this is just a general observation. I know it's going to go over like a lead balloon with a lot of people. Okay. But when people get into a position of power, they do what they can to stay there. Now, the reality is, I personally am a firm believer that somebody running a safe household, okay, and like the single father I ran into the other day, I pulled into the parking lot, and his little 3-year-old, right, she stood there and watched me pull into the parking lot, into the parking stall. Now, when I stopped to pull in there, she was in the middle of it. As soon as I stopped to pull in, she immediately got out of the way. Okay, she immediately went over to her father and stood by him out of the way of the car. Now, I had to thank both of them because I'll tell you, it made my parking so much easier. I'm sure some of you have run into that same situation. So we take a look at what's going on. I'm going to go, okay, you find out where your finances are, and then you figure out what it costs you to run your household. Okay, and I'm talking about and I'm not going to go into detail in this. I've done this on videos in the past, but you're talking about your rent or mortgage, utilities, your food, your entertainment, your transportation, your insurance. All of these things are things necessary to run your household safely. Okay, so you look at that and you go, I've got to have that. Everything over that, start putting it away. I'm 59, okay? Which means I'll hit that neat little point. Well, I've already got my paperwork to go after I think it's my CPP. Okay. my Canada pension plan. I got my paperwork about a month ago. I know where it is. I just haven't filled it out. But I have decided I'm going to apply for it for my 60th birthday, because waiting for it isn't going to do me any good. Okay. And this is the same thing you've got to look at when you're looking at anything to do with your finances. Ask yourself, do you require it right away, or can you put it aside for a little bit and just save the money for it? And what I mean by that is this. Okay, I've got this phone here. I broke the screen on. Okay, I broke the screen on this phone. So I'm going to go down to the company that I deal with for my cell phone, because I can get a free phone. Yeah, free my eyeball. But I'm going to go down, find out what the cost of a new phone bought outright is, and what kind of impact that's going to have on my monthly phone bill. Because I will tell you this: if I'm paying, if by the look of it, I'd be paying $100 extra, which means $100 extra a month, which means if I take this phone and get them to upgrade it for free at $100 a month, I'm paying $1,200 for the phone. I don't have any interest in doing that. Okay, same thing applies to cars. Now, cars are a little bit bigger problem because, of course, you've got your thousands of dollars. But the reality is, as long as the car works well, whether it's a Lamborghini, a Cadillac, or a Fiat, or a Kia, or whatever, you're looking at about 16 square inches of rubber that matter. Everything else is a bonus. Okay. And yeah, you can pay for all the bells and whistles, absolutely. But we have to look at the reality that the finances that are coming in, you go out and do a good job of work. And this is where we run into a neat little situation. I told you I was going to come back to this. Okay. You're a working person, so you go out and you do a solid day's work, and you come home and you have to pay all your bills, pay your taxes, etc. Now, I know this is going to upset people, because every time I mention it to somebody personally, they start complaining about it. Now, there are people on medical welfare and medical social services that absolutely require the social services, and they have no way of working. There's no way they can do it because they just have a situation that's completely untenable. Most of them, however, most people on social services or on government assistance, like it or not, and you don't have to believe me, from what I've seen from the people I've talked to, and we must be clear, this is not a statistic from the government or a general statistic taken from government sites or anybody else's site. This is from practical one-on-one talking to people in these systems. Okay, where most of them seem to sit there, they get on social assistance, and they do absolutely nothing. They get handed a lot of things for free, which, by the way, free means you're paying for them. As a taxpayer, you're paying for them. Now, I have always held that if you take the people that are physically capable of doing things, okay, physically capable of participating and helping, you take a crew of 20 people on welfare, and you take one government employee to oversee and make sure that things are being done properly, and just simply go, and this is just an idea, one that I would love to see implemented. No, I'm not on social services. Okay, I actually asked for help and got turned down. But that's a long story in and of itself. But if you take a group of 15, 20 social service and people on social services that are physically able to work, okay, they haven't got a job, they've got reasons for it, whatever. Maybe their stress level is too high, and there are cases where that really is a situation. But if you take them and one government employee to watch them and send that crew out to clean up the street, to literally pick garbage, it's not a difficult job. It's boring as all get out. It's absolutely hotter than Hades. But I'll tell you, the roofers that are out there, those are the ones that are really stuck in the heat problem. But you do that and you go, okay, you're going to put in an hour a week. And that's all we're talking about. I'm not talking about making them work 40 hours a day. We already know that doesn't work. That's why they're in the system. But you get them working an hour a week to actually get them so they are contributing to the community that is supporting them. Now, again, this is an idea of what can be done. However, so many people are against it that it's still the way it has been for years. Good afternoon, Nightmare. How you doing? Glad you made it in. We'll see you when you get back. If the governments were to do that, okay, then you wouldn't have, for a couple of things would happen. Number one, and I'm just talking about the streets as an example. The parks are another issue. Okay. There's all kinds of things that can be said there. But at least then you would have people looking at the people on social services, on government assistance, and go, hey, you guys are at least helping. This is good. It'll cut down on the tension between the people on government assistance and the people that are working. Okay. Money is not a bad thing. This is what people don't realize. The church says money is the root of all evil. Wrong. Thanks for playing. Sadly, fear is the root. And it manifests itself in the way of greed. And when you take a look at that, you take a look at the church, and the church doesn't have to pay taxes. And from what I gather, they don't pay taxes on the land that their buildings are sitting on. Okay. But they claim to be helping the poor and the poor and the sick. And yet I look at the streets and go, why are the churches empty on the, especially in the dead of winter? Why are the churches empty and the people are sleeping on the street? That makes sense, Elaine. Go have fun with your little four-legged child, because there's no doubt they require it. Oh, nicely done. Congratulations on the drop. I take a look at it and I go, okay, if you put the people to work, if you give them something, we'll try English. If you give people something to do, they will rise to the challenge. They will be able to do it. And I will tell you, I know from practical experience, because I used to be on employment insurance, EI, UI. I don't know what they call it in today's world. Okay, I'd go into the winter, and I'd be unemployed for a few months. And I'll tell you, it drove me right up the wall. From everybody that I've talked to, they feel better if they are working and getting, if they're putting time in and getting pay. Okay, but what's happening now is people are going, I want more money to be able to live better, but I don't want to do anything. I do not desire to change my way of doing things. Okay, well, if we desire this world to change, it is absolutely imperative that we start changing ourselves. This is one of those things that we have to look at and say, it cannot continue down this road. Well, it can, but the outcome's pretty cut and dried. Okay, if prices keep going up and wages keep going down, and people keep going, I'm not working because I'm not getting paid enough. Okay, if this path continues, this society is going to go back into another tailspin. Okay, and the neat little part about gambling on the stock market, I've got stocks, but I tell you, every time I put money in them, I lose money. So I just don't bother unless I absolutely have to. As in, my RSP works great on the immediate time. Have I made any money? Heavens no. I never do. This is why investing and I just don't get along. I will quite readily invest in people. Okay, I will put time in quite happily and talk to people about what they can do to help themselves. But this idea of doing it for them doesn't work. The government cannot change this and change our country or yours if you don't give them the tools to work with. And what are those tools? Stand up and tell them what you're not happy with. Do not sit quietly. Now, before anybody comes up with a brilliant idea, the government system is not the problem. The problem is the people that you've elected into it. Okay, now you can blame the larger corporations. I've seen people go, the government seats are all bought and paid for. And I will agree, it does appear that way. I will not say it is that way, but it certainly appears that way. What you can do, okay, and like I said, I did get into a local government here, and I spent 4 years there. But what I found was that the people that had money had far more pull than the people that didn't. And rest assured, I don't have a whole lot of money. Okay, I'm still very much like you. So I'm looking at this world going, what do we do with it and where do we go? Well, the first thing you do with it is acknowledge the fact that it is a real problem and it is not going to go away by ignoring it. Okay, the funny part about it is people keep talking about the immigration happening. Well, here's the thing. I got nothing against immigration. Nothing at all. Okay, because to me, every single individual on this planet, and I mean all the way from the smallest literal cockroach to the smallest amoeba, which is a single-celled organism, all the way to the leaders of countries, they are all of equal value. They don't all have the same amount of money, don't get me wrong. But the reality that we have to look at is if we desire this world to change, we have to do something about it. Each and every one of you has to do, quite literally, your part. Take care of your house first. I'm all for helping people that are having troubles. Absolutely. But the reality is, I see way too many that are having problems because they refuse to make adjustments to their own life. Okay. Like I know people, it's like I can barely afford to eat. They've got a brand spanking new computer. I can't afford to eat. Can you give me money? Well, I understand that computers are necessary in today's world. Okay. But the reality is, if you can't afford to eat, the computer is pretty much useless to you. Okay. It's like when you're looking at your bills. Okay. Yes, all utilities have to be paid. But if you don't have your mortgage or your rent paid, you're going to be out of a house and the rest of the utilities won't matter. If you don't have your power bill paid, you won't have any power, so the rest of the utilities won't matter. Okay, this is why I say it's imperative you get your priorities in order. And I'm talking about the ones that feel right to you, not the ones that feel right to everybody else. Okay, but this is something that has to be looked at. The biggest thing about having a lot of money is this. I heard it put actually by a multimillionaire. He says, money will not buy you happiness, but it certainly affords you the ability to look for it in a lot more places. Okay. Then I talked to another one. He goes, I've been miserable rich and I've been miserable poor. He says, hands down, I would rather be miserable rich. Myself, I am working at building an empire. Now, I'm making jack in the way of money, really. I think last month, I'm not going to look it up right now, but I think last month, I only made like $3,300. Am I still looking at building something bigger? You bet. But as I was told a long time ago, you shoot for the stars. Absolutely. You may not get what you're aiming at, but you'll at least get to the moon. Okay. You know, I've listened to a lot of things that hold a lot of water. From my standpoint, boils down to this. If you desire your life to change, absolutely, you're the one that's going to have to do something about it. If you desire the government to do things in a different fashion, then you're going to either have to run for office yourself or find a way to make a big impact on the people. Okay. Very necessary if you desire to make that happen. But you're the one that's got to make the choice. Now, if you don't know where to start or you don't know how to go about making things happen, and rest assured, if I knew anything about marketing, I'd be already in good shape. Okay. But frankly, that's not the way things are. So, I mean, I look at things and I go, okay, which way do we, and where do we go from here? You know, how do we go about turning things around? Well, the way you go about turning them around is you pick a place to start, which, by the way, you start right where you're sitting. Okay, that is where you start changing things. And when you start, how about now? Because even if you postpone it for another month or another couple of years, or even another day, when you finally do something, you're literally you're in the here and now, right this moment. Hey, I was right. If I do that, this is a complete sidetrack from just that. Whoa. This is a complete sidetrack from just that. Whoa. Okay. Just about every video I've gone, how the heck can I get to the live feed so I can see what's going on? Right. Yeah, I finally figured out. I wait a little while and it'll come up of its own accord. This is a nice little breakthrough. Now, the thing is, you have to take a look at where your world is. Okay, where your world is sitting. And you've got to turn around and make the changes necessary. If you don't know where to begin, where you begin is right where you're sitting. When you begin is right now. Okay, there is no point in putting it off because the only thing procrastination has ever accomplished is delaying things. But in order to make those changes happen, you've got to be the one pushing the envelope. You've got to be the one picking the tools up. If you're not happy with your government, absolutely show up on the doorstep and go, here it is. You know, I'm a firm believer that face-to-face works far better than any phone call. I'm living proof of it. The number of times I've had somebody phone me on these and it says, unknown number. Okay, unknown number. I just look at it and go, well, if it's unknown, I don't need to talk to it. And most of the time I don't. The ones that I know I have to talk to, I will phone and deal with. Okay, but I've given up recommending different companies except for one. Okay. And that one, like Spaced Out Radio, is where I got my start. Well, it's not where I got my start, but I have been with them for over 7 years now. You know, and Dave has done a phenomenal job and really helped me a lot personally. You know, so will I recommend listening to his shows? Absolutely. Okay, that's at spacedoutradio.com. Okay, now the neat part about what got me, I'm going to back up a little here, but what got me thinking about the finances and that sort of thing in the first place, first of all, we had the civil elections going on, you know, the local ones, right? But then I got looking at this other issue. Okay. Years ago, back in grade 10, I wrote a storyline. Okay. And these books are the outcome of that. That's the birth of the wolf pack. Okay. As you can see, functionally thick. The people that have told me that they could help me with marketing have unilaterally failed. Okay. Just that's the easiest way to put it. But I got thinking of it. This one is the first one in the trilogy. It's actually a 12-volume set. This is the second one in that same trilogy. Okay. The third one I'm working on now is called Return to Paradise. And what that brought about was, okay, how do we start from the ground up? What can be done differently to change the world so what these guys are going through doesn't get repeated? Okay. And unfortunately, this is kind of one of those weird setups where there's a bit of a crossover. Nightmare, welcome back. The reality of it is, I got thinking, okay, I've got a new society that's going through a massive change. It's got to go through a rebuild. So how do I get that on paper? So I started looking at the finances and seeing where the hiccups were. Now, I did exactly the same thing when I was writing the original, like the next one coming out will be Where It All Began. And I started writing down the various things in the way of, I wrote down the various things in the way of soulmates, twin flames, soul families, and reincarnation. All of that is included in bits, in succinct form in the other novels. I'm covering all of that side of it. Okay, it's just when I got to this point, I'm looking at it going, they're trying to rebuild this whole community is trying to rebuild, and it's got to get an anchor point. Okay, now do understand, money is not the be all. It's not the be all and end all by any means. But I will tell you, it's a lot easier to move a dollar bill around or a $10 bill than it is to move around a cow. Okay, and besides that, your money can sit in your wallet for a week at a time and never move, and it's fine. You leave a cow alone for a week without feeding it, I'm thinking you're going to end up with a dead cow. Okay, so I looked at it and went, okay, let's take a look and make sure that we understand where things are sitting. Because I'm going to try, what I'm aiming at doing is, as I go through this, helping put it together and say, okay, here's what can be done. Now, there's a main character, and just on me right now while I'm talking, the main character in the main protagonist is in the Birth of the Wolf Pack and the whole Yldrbacian Chronicles, especially the last 4 of the last 3 books, is Jeremiah Wollstrand. Okay, and just dawned on me while he's thinking about all these things on his own, in his journal entries, this information I'm talking about right now. Okay, it's an easy thing to insert into the books. Like I said, I'm a gamer. I play Dungeons and Dragons. I have roughly twice a week on average for the last 45 years. Okay, so when you look at that, I've got a lot of things I've gone through, but these are things that do apply to everybody. And if you're going to change your world for what you consider the better, you're the one that's going to have to do it. And pointing the finger at everybody else doesn't work well. Okay, I could sit here and tell you, oh, I'm upset with this government agency, with this company. I could absolutely go there. Okay, instead what I do is go, yeah, it cost me, I've spent probably, and I can only guesstimate really, probably $10,000 in the last 5 years on people that said they could help me with marketing. Now, all they proved to me, the only thing they have proved to me, is that they can take my money and give me absolutely nothing. They've got and all of them have had great sales teams. But thus far, I have not made anywhere near my investment back. And I was virtually guaranteed by the way these salespeople put it out that this is what would end up happening. Well, they absolutely, not a one of them have pulled it off. Okay, I was talking to one the other day, and they said, I told them that my website, rkeithandrews.com, was not bringing in, it wasn't working properly because all I was getting was ads from bots. Okay. Since they set the site up, I've had one inquiry into one of my books. Okay. And so I've phoned them up and I said, look, this is happening. And, I dropped them a line. I said, look, this is the problem I'm having. Okay. So they wrote me back and said, your site is working perfectly. Well, when I get done this video, I'm going to be writing them a very succinct letter going, okay, if my site is working properly and you're getting it to the people that are going to buy, why in the last 2 weeks have I had one inquiry into the books and over a dozen offers of mine getting into cryptocurrency? Okay, if your site is bringing me potential sales, why is this the outcome? You're telling me this is working. This ain't working. Okay, and this is what I have discovered, that investment. Yes, you might consider it lost money because I sunk all the money into it. I haven't gotten much back from it at all. Okay. And all that's done is taught me that the big corporations they're great at giving up the hype and they're great at painting a beautiful picture, but they don't follow through. At least in my case, they haven't. Okay. In my case, what they've done is taken my money on a promise, on a guarantee, or at least left me with the belief that they had a guarantee, that they would get it out to all these sites and be all this visibility. Well, even on a minimal amount, if you take a look, like I was told 50,000 fresh qualified buyers. Now, if you think about it, at 50,000 qualified buyers, times one, what? Can't do that. You go 50,000 times 0.01 at only 1% return. Okay, I should have sold 500 books by now. That's at only 1% return. Now, I've sold one. Okay, as a matter of fact, I shouldn't say that. I've had one inquiry. And with another company I've been working with for a couple of years, they've sold 4. Now, I'll tell you right now, if they're guaranteeing 50,000 qualified buyers, and that was a guarantee, at 1%, that means I should have had 500 books sold. Now, 500 bucks and 500 books from that one company would have paid for what I had. It would have meant I get a little better than breaking even. Governments do the same thing. But you got to understand, governments are a big business. The church, any temple is a business. Okay. And this is where we run into the problem, is making too many allowances for, if you will, shoddy behavior, shoddy service. Oh, they're really busy. I used to do that. I'd sit there and go, well, they've got to be really busy. That's why they haven't gotten back to me. And what I came to understand was this is not the situation. What is happening here is they get your money, and this is my experience with big business, with government, okay? They get your money from you, and then when you've got a problem, they ignore it long enough that they figure you'll go away. And most people do. Most people walk away. Okay, that's where it becomes a problem. Okay, so when we're looking at the situation, you have to realize that if we're going to change this world, if we're going to make things happen, it has to be done in the here and now. Okay, now with that in mind, we are looking at a very simple little problem. Now, I can go around in circles and circles and say, we've got to do something. Question you have to ask. Now, I'm saying I have to do something to get my own finances straightened out. Okay, so what I am doing is I've cut back on the expenses I'm using. And I look at it and go, okay, what did I have at the beginning of the month in this account? in these accounts that are active. If I am 1 penny over, if I'm 1 penny above that by the end of the month, okay, then I'm moving in the right direction. Okay, am I likely to be a multimillionaire before I die? I wouldn't hold my breath. But then money has never been a major motivator for me. That's just the reality of it. You have to figure out what you see as being successful. Okay, and if you're not content with what's happening with you, it is absolutely imperative that you turn around and start making adjustments. Start correcting that take on things so that you can get what you're aiming for. Okay. Now, you cannot function with life working 24/7. And Lord knows I probably work too much. And I would be inclined to say that, see if that helps. My temperature is going through the roof right now. And this is not necessarily a good thing. I'm wondering what the temperature is, because I'm starting to melt here. Temperature, is 14 degrees. I got my window wide open and I'm overheating. That's always nice. Now, this is an oddity because I have no idea how to pause this. So I am going to be back as soon as I can. Well, as soon as I can. Give me a few minutes. But I'm going to be polite. I have to make a run to the washroom, so I will be back. And yeah, I realize this is live. Well, it's been live recording. Or live streaming, or whatever you want to call it. I don't have the luxury of having a whole pile of backup people here. Okay. I don't have a whole crew, a whole technical crew that I can swap things off on. Because quite frankly, I'm not that big of an individual. But I got thinking, between the combination of the city elections going on, city council elections, and the fact that I've got this book called Return to Paradise, okay, where everything has to come back into a balance point, I kind of figured it was time to really start looking at things and go, okay, how could we take this and finish the job properly? Okay, that's just the reality behind it. Now, I'm just going to call this up because I want to see if there's been a change, and I can do that on this screen. Nice part about having multiple screens is I can actually get a look at all of them. And I'm betting it hasn't done a whole lot. It's just trying to charge up. But I got thinking, the whole saga runs from the beginning of time all the way to beyond the current age, after mankind collapses. And it was just something that dawned on me that this was just the way it was going to be. I wrote the storyline in grade 10, right? And now what I'm looking at, where are we here? Go to my channel. And yeah, I'm sitting at 310 subscribers. So, the reality is I am a tiny, tiny voice. And I feel a lot of the time like I'm screaming into the wind going, how can you do this consistently? How can so many people be pushed through so many schools, and the school's telling them you've got A's and B's, and these people cannot think. They've never been taught how. Okay. Now, there's a lot of things that lead to that. And this is one that I really encourage parents on the whole, from every walk of life. If you're sitting there, if you've got a child, do not keep your current financial situation from them. First of all, if you're in financial struggles, they know you're in trouble anyway, and you'll see that in their behavior. Okay. If you come right out and say, number one, here's the situation we're in, here's how we change it. Okay. And you work with them, teach them how money works. When they get out of the house, they are already equipped to handle it properly. Okay. If you do not teach them, they're going to learn it the hard way, the same way you likely did. Because I know when I was growing up, my parents kept finances away from me, and I ran into all kinds of problems. And then, of course, when they told me to go to qualified financial advisors, I was guided twice into bankruptcy by professionals. Now, of course, I didn't know what he was doing, so I took their word for it. I was told that's what you do. I'll tell you right now, I went bankrupt the first time on $6,000. Only $6,000. Okay, the second time I went bankrupt, again at their guidance, at the professionals' guidance, on $14,000. Now, the only people that benefited from that were the bankruptcy trustees. That's it. Okay, it scrambled my credit rating, and I'm only just now starting to get things moving in the right direction. I'm just now, because nobody would give the information. Okay, it's like, yeah, we encourage you to watch your credit rating. We encourage you to run a balanced budget, but nobody teaches you how to do it. Okay, and this is something that, quite frankly, I am not a financial advisor in as much as I have never been trained. Don't ask me who to invest in because, frankly, I've lost money on every investment I've ever made. I'm not a good example from that end. But will I tell you you can overcome the whole 9 yards? You bet. The reality of it is, now here's something. If you go to any, and this is total sidetrack, if you go to any amusement park, okay, they've always got games that you can win prizes at. Okay, this particular glass, okay, if you look at it, right, I don't think, there you go. That was my parents' mug, okay, Betty and Bill Peony 1976. Okay, the Pacific National Exhibition. We played one of the games, and we won this. Well, more to the point, they did. I just ended up with it after they died. Okay, now the neat part about all of this is if you teach your kids even if you're in the worst financial state you've ever been in, okay, sit down with your kids as soon as possible and go, this is where we're standing. This is what our goal is. This is what we have to do to get there. And you walk them through it. This will teach them how to handle finances on their own. Okay. You do the same with cooking. Now, my son, thankfully, his mom is an excellent cook, and we still get along. We've been divorced now for, 14 years, I think? Almost 15. But we still get along. So my youngest son is learning how to cook from his mom. Okay. These are life skills that many of the kids getting out of the house, getting out of and graduating are not being taught. It falls to you. Okay. Where you have children, it falls to you to make sure they get taught. The educational system, in case you hadn't noticed, isn't working well. What they're doing is shoving kids through. And again, it boils down to money, at least as near as I can tell. But where it comes to turning the whole 9 yards around, we have to look at the individual. And, like I said, it's a question of realizing that making headway is going to be a cooperative effort. Society is not going to change on one person's effort. It's not going to change on one person's guidance. Now, I mean, we can take a look at the major religious icons. Okay. And even there, you want to take a look at Christianity, which is a massive organization. And quite frankly, sad to say, it is more business than spirituality now, at least from what I've seen. But when Christ walked the earth, assuming, of course, you believe in Christ, okay, he was one man, but he did not make the changes on his own. He walked out and said, this is what's got to happen. And he walked the walk. He walked the talk. He said, this is what you have to do. This is how to go about doing it. And this is where I look at it going, from my standpoint, yes, I am using the videos to try and get people to look at the world, to get people to look at the world in a different light. But when I say you've got to take control of your life, that applies to me as well. And the tools I'm talking about, is that... Nope, I always grab the wrong one first. This one is the backbone of how I turned my life around. Okay, I am in the process of writing other ones as well. Like I said, I'm right now in the middle of writing, I think, 20 books simultaneously. But the idea here is very simple. You have to take a look in the mirror and go, am I content with the world the way I have it right now? Okay. Am I going to leave this world? Because you're all going to die. Nobody is going to outlive death. It's just not going to work. Okay, you might for a little while. I mean, heck, at 5 years old, I walked out of the morgue. No, I'm not about to try and prove it happened on a military base. Okay, but the reality is, if we're going to change this world, finances is only one aspect of it. Okay, but while you're working with your finances, if you've got kids, if you've got a friend that doesn't know what they're doing with their money, okay, and you do, sit down with them and show them what you're doing. Okay, people on the whole are not going to worry one way or the other about whether you bought a new car last week or whether you bought a can of beans. They just don't worry about it that much. They've got enough on their own plate. Now, I certainly encourage you to talk to people, show people what you're doing. Absolutely. Okay. But the reality is, I'm not talking about showing them your PIN number or your bank account information. I get the same things that you get. I get these same inquiries. Give me X number of dollars and you'll make 5,000 within by the end of the night. It may happen. It might. I cannot say I won't put money into it. Okay, well, I can say that. But you have to realize that the effort you put in, if you're putting in physical effort, you'll get physical responses. Okay, but your success level, first of all, you got to figure out what success is. Okay, can I see problems with City Hall or with the government? You bet I can. Okay, this is blatantly obvious by the lack of humanity across the globe. The lack of caring, the me, immediate gratification. This is where the problems are starting from. Well, in all fairness, that's not entirely correct. Fear is where it's starting from. And government agencies, your governments, your religious communities, your advertising agencies, they all do the same thing. They build on this, making you afraid of not keeping up with the Joneses or afraid of not having your material stuff. Okay, I will tell you, I saw something the other day. It was absolutely priceless. Okay, I saw on YouTube, I saw a picture. It was just a little short. And this guy, I'm guessing by the look of him, probably in his early 40s, maybe late 30s. But he had an absolutely brilliant relationship with his daughter. Okay, his daughter was preteen, probably 9, 10 by the look of her. Okay, and they set the film up and what have you. And this late 30, early 40-year-old gentleman comes sliding toward, he's got a hardwood floor. And he comes sliding across the floor in his bare feet, or in his sock feet. And then his daughter comes sliding up behind him, and he turns around and catches, she leaps and he catches her in his arms. Right? And then they turn around and go off on their own. But this is what is really missing. That family unity. I looked at that and went, there's something to really be happy with. And this is something we have to take a serious look at and go, how are we doing things? How is this world going to change? Are we turning it into something that we would be happy to come into? Are we leaving the world in a better place, as a better place, than when we got here? But much as finances are not the be-all and end-all, I will tell you this. If you're spending more money than you're making, you're doing it wrong. It's that simple. Unless you're trying to go broke. Money itself will not care how you feel, but I will tell you, when I do get low, I tend to spend money, and I think it's just trying to convince myself that I'm still doing well. And I'm not doing bad. I've got more money, not that I had at the beginning of the year. My mom's estate came through, and I wiped that out pretty clearly. Okay. But it did put me in better shape, and I haven't dropped to a disaster level yet. But I've still got room to improve. And this is what I mean by, I'm not going to tell you that I'm better than you are, that I've gone through all this, and that makes me, I've gone through worse than you have. I'll tell you what, I told somebody the other day, okay, their child was complaining about something, and the parent tried brushing it off, and I looked at the parent, and I said, yeah, that problem that the kid was going through, probably was, to you, a minor thing, okay? But a 4-year-old that's learning how to get dressed, okay, when they can't find their sock, that is the end of the world for them in a lot of cases. Because they're trying to build this sense of independence and they can't find their sock. Now, to an adult, that may be, it's annoying, but we'll go find another one. That is not the way the younger mind works. Okay. The same thing happens to adults. I knew one situation where the gentleman kept telling an older woman, computers are easy. And of course, the older woman would get more and more frustrated with the setup because they just couldn't wrap their brain around it. And I finally took the older woman aside and I said, look, you got to understand, these are easy concepts once you understand them. Okay. I mean, I suffer from PTSD going near a hospital or a dentist. Okay. But my first inclination towards it was watching an airman who had just come back from the war. Okay. And somebody dropped a jar of pickles. He went into absolute panic and tried getting under the grocery shelf. And it wasn't a question of it just being an easy, just relax, it's just a bottle of pickles. That's not the way it works. When you're struggling with money, if this is where I caution you, and I've made this mistake myself. Give somebody money because they're in trouble, because that'll help. It doesn't help. Not from what I've seen. It does once in a while. But if somebody's saying, can I get money just to go buy groceries? Either go buy the groceries or take them to go grocery shopping so you know that the money is going to the groceries. Because I will tell you, the other bills will take dominant precedence. Okay, that is just the way people are. It's the way people think. But we have to take a look at, like, for instance, when I was looking at the city election here just on Saturday, I looked at the city election, and I don't follow the politicians, so I didn't go through, this one's saying this and this one's saying that. I thought I told him that. Thought it'd be. Yes, this is what's called live. And yeah, I know that means I get sidetracked, but like when I walked out of here, life goes on. I was told by a professional videographer I should sit still. Okay, that I should sit still. It's more professional. It'll hold people's attention more. It may. Okay, but the reality of it is that's not me, and I would rather that I'm being honest with people than I would be that things are going. That I'm doing what is right. And don't get me wrong, I'm an absolute firm believer that you must follow the laws of the land in which you are. There are laws I do not agree with. Absolutely, there are. Personally, I don't agree with the seatbelt law or the helmet law. Okay. However, they are the law and therefore I follow them. It's kind of like the tax laws. I don't agree with a lot of them. To me, it does not make sense. Somebody calculated it out. And somebody posted one day, if billionaires had to pay tax, they would still be making billions of dollars on their investments. Okay, but this is why I say having a price, having a minimum of this high number before you stop paying taxes and you start getting tax breaks is less socially functional than having, once you drop below this level of income, you don't have tax breaks. You don't have to pay tax. It's completely flipped around backwards in my eyes. Okay, but I cannot seem to get the people that are in a position to do something with it to realize this. It's kind of like what they did with the school system. All of a sudden, everybody gets pushed through whether they can do the work or not. This is not helping society. It's not helping the child. It's not helping their self-esteem. Okay, I just don't see any way that this is actually benefiting anybody. Except from what I gather, and this is complete hearsay on my part. Okay, but from what I've been told by many people, teachers get paid based on the size of their class. Now, I'm hoping that is misinformation. It is simply what I've been told. Okay, and board members are paid by the amount of schools they can have up and running. But again, this boils down to money being the focal point. And we cannot afford to continue having money as a focal point. Okay, we have to take a look at the world and go, okay, which way are we going to go with this? Okay, how are we going to deal with it? And I'm looking at this going, I really have a serious situation here where I'm looking at the number of people that are like, I do go back through my what do we call it? I do go back through word I'm looking for, through my dashboard to see what kind of state I'm in. And quite honestly, it doesn't seem to be doing as well. It isn't having the impact I'd like. But time will tell. Well, that is interesting. Oh, that's why, because I got to go to customize channel. So if I go to that, and I'm just looking at this here, are we going to fire up? Probably sooner or later. Yeah, it would seem my throat is starting to seize, so I'm going to have to look at the length of time I'm running these for. The half hour was working really well. An hour I can probably get away with, but the reality of it is that it's not working as well as I'd like. And with that in mind, because my throat's going to seize completely here pretty shortly, this much is blatantly obvious. So with that said, I do thank you very much for joining me, and I will return. But until then, just about missed you there, Ange. I'm just shutting down. Well, I'm glad you did drop in. as it turns out, my throat is seizing, so I'm going to be calling it a night. Okay, or an afternoon or whatever you call it. But thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate your support and your showing up and the incredible encouragement I get from time to time. I will be back, but until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.